Your Roosevelt dime might not be just pocket change. It could hide a secret worth thousands. Silver years, rare mint marks, and unbelievable errors are hiding in plain sight. Check every dime. Your fortune might be the size of a tiny 10-cent coin. The 1990 U.S. Roosevelt $1 is one of those coins that almost everyone has handled countless times without ever imagining that it could be worth more than the 10 cents printed on it. Light, silver-colored, and so common that most people don't even bother picking it up from the floor, it moves quietly through the pockets and cash registers of daily life. Yet, among the millions of dimes struck in 1990, a few rare and extraordinary errors slipped through the minting process, errors so dramatic, so unexpected, and so visually striking that some examples have sold for $62,500, $78,900, and even $132,600 in major auctions. These are the kinds of coins that turn ordinary pocket change into treasure. To understand how such a modern coin can reach those astonishing values, it helps to imagine the environment of the U.S. Mint in 1990. Coin production was running at high speed. The economy was active, demand was strong, and the machinery was working continuously. Dies were replaced often, but even brand new dies could crack, shift, or misalign in a fraction of a second. Feeders could jam, planchets could be mixed, and automated systems, though advanced, were not flawless. And when a flaw did occur at the exact wrong moment, an error coin was created. Most errors were caught and destroyed, but a small number escaped into circulation, and those survivors are now some of the most sought-after modern dimes. One of the most striking types of errors seen in 1990 is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank planchet is not positioned properly beneath the dies before striking. The result is a design that is shifted to one side, leaving blank areas on the coin. A slight off-center doesn't add much value, but when the misalignment becomes extreme, 50%, 60%, or 70%, the coin becomes something entirely different. A 1990 dime struck about 55% off-center sold for $4,950, and another example with a stunning 70% off-center strike, with the date still intact, reached $8,700. These coins are dramatic and immediately noticeable, making them favorites among both beginners and advanced collectors. Another fascinating error from the year is the double strike, one of the most visually impressive mistakes the mint can produce. In a double strike error, the coin receives a second blow from the dies before being ejected. Sometimes this second strike is perfectly aligned, producing a subtle doubling. Other times, it's rotated or shifted so dramatically that the coin seems to display two overlapping versions of itself. A 1990 dime with a strong rotated double strike sold for $16,800, while another with two nearly full impressions, one positioned far off the edge, sold for $21,500. These pieces look like captured moments of chaos inside the minting chamber. But the rarest and most valuable errors from 1990 are the wrong planchet strikes, where a dime design is struck onto a metal blank intended for a different coin. When this happens, the entire appearance of the coin changes. It may be too small or too large, too light or too heavy, the wrong color, or missing parts of the design entirely because the image doesn't fit the planchet. One of the most remarkable examples was a 1990 dime struck on a copper penny planchet, producing a reddish dime with missing edges and incomplete lettering. This piece sold for $62,500, partly because the error was so visually shocking and unmistakable. But even that was not the highest price recorded. The standout record for the year was a 1990 dime struck on a foreign planchet, likely a blank intended for an international coin. The color was irregular, the edges were partially unfinished, and parts of Roosevelt's profile spilled off the surface because the blank was slightly too small. The coin was graded mint state and had excellent visual appeal, and collectors bid aggressively. It eventually sold for $132,600, making it one of the most valuable Roosevelt dime errors ever discovered. Another dramatic error from 1990 is the missing clad layer. Dimes are made of a copper core sandwiched between layers of cupronickel. When one of the layers fails to bond properly, the coin can appear copper-colored on one side or even on both. A 1990 dime missing the clad layer on one side sold for $5,850, while another missing both layers, appearing entirely copper, sold for $11,700. These coins are easy to recognize and highly collectible, especially in high grades. There were also several examples of struck-through errors, where a foreign object gets between the die and the planchet during striking. It could be a piece of metal, cloth fibers, grease, or fragments left over from another coin. These unexpected objects leave deep marks or missing details on the coin. A particularly dramatic 1990 dime struck through a large metal fragment sold for $2,600, and another struck through heavy mint grease that erased nearly half of Roosevelt's face sold for $1,950. These errors are unique because no two struck-through coins are exactly alike. Some of the most visually appealing errors from 1990 came from damaged dies. Die cracks, die breaks, and cuds appear when parts of the die fracture or break off entirely. These imperfections transfer directly onto the coin, creating raised lines, blobs of metal, or missing sections of the design. A dime from 1990 with a large cud covering the rim sold for $1,650, and another showcasing a dramatic die crack across the reverse brought $1,300. These pieces are not as valuable as wrong planchet strikes, but they are loved by collectors who enjoy the personality of each unique flaw. The broad strike error also produced some interesting 1990 dimes. When the collar die fails to engage during striking, the metal flows outward, creating a coin that is wider and flatter than normal. A 1990 dime with a clean broad strike in mint state sold for $1,250, while another with both a broad strike and a slight off-center strike reached $2,100. These coins look stretched, almost like they were melted outward. Another subtle but collectible variation is the partial collar strike, where only part of the rim forms normally. A 1990 dime with this error sold for $950, proving that even small anomalies can attract serious buyers when the coin is well preserved. One of the reasons 1990 dime errors are so fascinating is that they are modern enough that many circulated for years. People used these coins without noticing the irregularities. Someone could have bought a snack, paid for parking, or handed a dime as change without ever realizing it might be worth thousands of dollars. Even today, many error dimes remain undiscovered in jars of coins, old drawers, or rolls of change waiting to be searched. Anyone who finds a dime from 1990 that looks unusual, wrong color, missing details, doubled elements, blank areas, odd edges, should take a closer look. The difference between a normal dime and a treasure can be surprisingly subtle. But the most important rule for finding any rare error coin still applies. Never clean the coin. Cleaning destroys the mint luster, leaves scratches, removes original texture, and can reduce the value by more than half. The safest approach is to place the coin in a protective holder and send it to a grading service like PCGS or NGC to confirm the error and secure its value. The 1990 Roosevelt dime shows that even in an era of modern minting technology, mistakes still happen, and when they do, they can turn a 10-cent piece into a valuable collectible. The most sought-after errors of the year, wrong planchet strikes, dramatic double strikes, and extreme off-center strikes, have sold between $62,500 and $132,600. Numbers that surprise anyone unfamiliar with the world of mint errors. So if you ever come across a 1990 dime, take a moment before spending it. Turn it over, look closely at the rim, the color, the lettering, and Roosevelt's face. That small coin might not be ordinary after all. It could be a rare survivor of a momentary minting accident, an accidental masterpiece hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to recognize its true value. The 1999 No-S Roosevelt Dime is one of those coins people barely notice. Small, silver-colored, light, and so ordinary that it slips through pockets, drawers, cash registers, and vending machines without anyone giving it a second look. It's a coin that millions of Americans have touched, spent, saved, dropped, or ignored. But what almost no one realizes is that among the millions of dimes produced in 1999, a few were born with extraordinary, unexpected, and incredibly valuable mint errors. Errors so dramatic that certain 1999 Roosevelt dimes have sold for $56,750 to as high as $125,500 at major auctions, turning a simple 10-cent piece into a small fortune. To understand how a modern dime can carry such a price, you have to imagine what was happening inside the U.S. Mint in 1999. It was the closing year of a decade, a period of massive coin production, high national demand, and non-stop mechanical pressure. The minting machines were fast, efficient, and powerful, But like any industrial system running at full speed, they were also vulnerable to sudden misalignment, broken dies, jams, and mechanical slips. Even one minor flaw, a shifted planchet, a cracked die, a faulty feeder, could create a unique error coin. Most errors were caught early and destroyed, but some slipped through. And those few have become treasures. One of the most visually dramatic 1999 dime errors is the off-center strike. This occurs when the planchet doesn't sit perfectly between the dies before being struck. Part of the design lands on the blank metal, leaving a large empty crescent. While mild off-center strikes aren't very valuable, extreme ones can command impressive prices. A 1999 dime struck 55% off-center sold for $4,900, and another with a 70% shift, yet still showing the date, which is crucial, reached $8,950 at auction. It's the kind of error anyone could recognize instantly, even with no numismatic experience. Another spectacular error from 1999 is the double strike, where a coin is struck twice due to a failure in the ejection process. The second strike may land cleanly on top of the first, or it may be misaligned, rotated, or partially off the edge. These misaligned double strikes are the most valuable because they create distorted, almost surreal images. A doubled Roosevelt portrait, repeated lettering, elongated shapes, and layered dates. One 1999 dime with a second strike rotated 35 degrees sold for $13,700, while another, with two nearly full impressions offset dramatically, reached $19,250. But the most valuable error of all, the one that creates the true legends of the 1999 dime, is the wrong planchet strike. This is when a dime is mistakenly struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a foreign coin. This type of error is extremely rare in modern minting, and because of that, the value can explode. One dramatic example is a 1999 dime struck on a copper-plated zinc cent planchet. The result was a dime design appearing faintly on a copper-colored surface, slightly too large for the striking area. That coin sold for $56,750. Another remarkable case involved a dime struck on a foreign planchet slightly smaller and lighter than a normal US dime. Because of the difference in size, the design did not fit correctly. Part of Roosevelt's head was missing, the date was incomplete, and the edge looked uneven. That scarce piece, certified in high mint state condition, sold for an incredible $125,500, making it one of the most valuable 1999 dime errors ever discovered. Another unusual yet valuable type of error seen in dimes from 1999 is the missing clad layer error. Since modern dimes are composed of a copper core sandwiched between two layers of cupronickel, sometimes one of these layers doesn't bond properly. When a dime is struck missing its outer layer, one side appears copper-colored instead of silver. A 1999 dime missing its clad layer on the reverse sold for $6,200, while another missing the layer on both sides, a very rare occurrence, sold $4.11. 500. Mechanical issues in 1999 also produced broad strike errors, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar that shapes the edge. Without the collar, the metal expands outward, creating a wider, flatter dime with a smooth edge. A broad strike dime from 1999 graded MS66 sold for $1,450, while another with a combination of broad strike and slight off-center placement fetched $2,750. Die deterioration also contributed to some fascinating errors in 1999. These include die cracks, die breaks, and cuds, all formed when the dies themselves fracture or break under pressure. A dime with a heavy die crack running across Roosevelt's cheek sold for $950, while another featuring a prominent cud on the rim sold for $1,600. Although not the highest valued errors, collectors appreciate these coins because each one is unique and visibly shows the strain of the minting machinery. Another error that occasionally appears in 1999 dimes is the partial collar strike, where the retaining collar engages only partially during striking. This leaves one part of the rim properly formed while the rest appears crushed or expanded. A well-preserved 1999 partial collar strike sold for $1,150, showing that even subtle minting mistakes can attract strong bids in the collector market. What makes the 1999 Roosevelt dime especially interesting is that it's not an old coin. It is not from the 1940s or 1950s. It is part of the modern era, meaning many collectors overlooked error hunting in coins this recent. As a result, countless people have handled these dimes without ever examining them closely. That's why rare 1999 error dimes continued to circulate unnoticed for years, and why some may still be sitting today in jars of loose change, forgotten drawers, or inherited collections. If someone comes across a 1999 dime that looks unusual, whether the design is misaligned, the coin is oddly shaped, the color is wrong, the portrait appears doubled, or part of the surface looks blank, they may have discovered something truly valuable. But before doing anything, one important rule must be followed. Never clean a rare coin. Cleaning removes original surfaces, damages mint luster, and can reduce a coin's value dramatically. A cleaned coin that could have sold for thousands might drop to a fraction of its true worth. The best approach is to place the coin in a protective holder and send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. Certification increases a coin's value, provides authenticity, and gives buyers the confidence they need when bidding in auctions. The 1999 Roosevelt dime proves something important. Even in the modern era of high-precision minting, mistakes still happen. And when they do, they can turn a 10-cent piece into a 5-figure collectible. The most coveted errors, wrong planchet strikes, extreme double strikes, and dramatic off-center strikes, have reached between $56,750 and $125,500, making them some of the most valuable modern dime errors known. So the next time you spot a 1999 dime in your hand, don't dismiss it. Look at it carefully. Turn it under the light. Study the rim, the size, the alignment, the color, the thickness, the placement of Roosevelt's portrait. You might not just be holding a simple dime. You might be holding a rare survivor of the minting process. A tiny treasure that escaped destruction and is now waiting for someone with sharp eyes to discover its true worth. The 2014 No-S Roosevelt Dime is a coin most people barely notice. The small, light, silver-colored, and so familiar that we use it without thinking. It pays for parking meters, vending machines, laundry, or it simply piles up in jars and drawers. And yet, hidden among the millions of dimes struck in 2014 are some of the rarest and most surprising mint errors of the modern era. Errors so dramatic, so visually unusual, and so scarce that certain examples have sold between $40,600 and $88,600, turning a simple 10-cent coin into a piece worth thousands. To understand how this is possible, picture the U.S. Mint in 2014. It's a fast, automated environment. Machines feeding blanks non-stop, dies striking thousands of coins per minute, maintenance teams replacing tools and adjusting settings constantly. Even with modern precision, mistakes still happen. A blank can shift, a die can crack, a feeder can misalign, and in that split second, a unique error coin is created. Most of these errors are detected and destroyed, but a small number escape into circulation, unnoticed, mixed with everyday change, and years later become treasures for collectors. One of the most striking errors from 2014 is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank planchet isn't perfectly aligned under the die. Instead of the dime's design being centered, part of it is pushed to the side, leaving a blank crescent at the edge. Mild off-center strikes are interesting, but not valuable. But when the strike is 50%, 60%, or even 70% off-center, the coin becomes a true rarity. A 2014 dime struck about 55% off-center, with the date still visible, sold for $3,800. Another example, with a dramatic 70% off-center strike that almost cut Roosevelt's portrait in half, reached $6,100. These pieces are eye-catching and instantly recognizable as mint errors. Even someone who knows nothing about coins can see something is wrong. Another spectacular error is the double strike, where the coin is struck twice before being ejected. If the second strike lands slightly rotated or offset, the result is incredible. Roosevelt's face duplicated like a ghost image, numbers appearing twice, letters overlapping, the rim distorted into unusual shapes. A 2014 double-struck dime with the second strike rotated 30 degrees sold for $14,950, while another with two nearly complete impressions, almost like two coins layered together, reached $19,400. These errors show the precise moment a die malfunctioned, frozen forever in metal. But the most valuable and dramatic errors of the 2014 dime are the wrong planchet strikes. These occur when a dime design is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination, or even for a foreign coin. These mistakes are extremely rare in modern minting, which makes them incredibly desirable. One well-known example is a 2014 dime struck on a copper-colored penny planchet. The coin looked bizarre. Roosevelt's image appeared incomplete, part of the design was cut off, and the entire surface was the wrong color. That piece sold for $40,600, shocking collectors who knew how uncommon the error was. But the record-breaking 2014 dime error is even more unusual. A dime struck on a foreign coin planchet, slightly lighter in color and with a different diameter. The mismatch caused the design to fall off the edges, leaving gaps and creating a striking, one-of-a-kind appearance. Certified in high mint state condition, this coin reached an astonishing $88,600 at auction. For a coin that normally buys almost nothing, reaching that price is beyond extraordinary. The 2014 dime also produced some fascinating missing clad layer errors. Modern dimes are made with a copper core and two outer layers of cupronickel. When one of these layers fails to bond properly, the coin appears copper-colored on one side, or completely copper-colored on both sides if both layers are missing. A missing clad layer error on the obverse sold for $5,200, while a coin missing clad layers on both sides reached $9,700. These errors are visually obvious, making them popular even among beginner collectors. Some 2014 dimes also show broad strikes, caused when the collar fails to hold the coin in place during striking. Without the collar, the dime spreads outward and loses its usual rim and thickness. One broad strike in mint state 66 sold for $1,350, and another with a slight off-center appearance reached $200. Errors caused by die damage were also present. These include die cracks, die breaks, and cuds. When a die begins to fracture, raised lines or lumps appear on the coin's surface. A 2014 dime with a large cud near the rim sold for $1,150, and another with a dramatic die crack across the reverse reached $1,800. These aren't five-figure errors, but each one is unique and highly collectible. Another interesting type of error is the struck-through error, which happens when a foreign object, like grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, or debris, is trapped between the die and the planchet. This can create smooth blank areas, indents, or strange shapes on the coin. A 2014 dime struck through thick grease that partially erased Roosevelt's face sold for $950, while another struck through metal debris reached $1,600 due to its unusual texture. The partial collar strike error also appears in some 2014 dimes. In this error, part of the rim is properly formed and part is crushed or incomplete. One example in high grade sold for $1,050, showing that even subtle errors can bring surprising results. What makes the 2014 dime especially exciting is how recent it is. These coins are still out there, in pockets, cash registers, tip jars, car cup holders, desk drawers, and change jars in people's homes. That means a valuable error dime from 2014 could be found by someone who isn't even looking for it. Someone could pay for a soda with a dime worth thousands and never know it. So if you ever come across a dime from 2014, don't ignore it. Look at the color. Check the edges. Look closely at the date, the portrait, the thickness, and the design alignment. A slight discoloration, a shifted rim, a doubled number, or an incomplete design might be the sign of a rare mint error. And before anyone tries to clean a coin they suspect is valuable, here's a rule that cannot be repeated enough. Never clean a rare coin. Cleaning destroys the original luster, damages the surface, and can reduce the value of an error coin by more than half. The best approach is simple: store the coin in a protective holder and send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. A certified coin is easier to sell, more trusted by buyers, and can reach much higher auction prices. The 2014 Roosevelt Dime proves something incredible. Even in a modern age of high-speed machinery and advanced precision, errors can still happen. And when they do, they can transform a tiny, overlooked 10-cent coin into a remarkable collector's treasure. The most valuable errors from that year, wrong planchet strikes, dramatic double strikes, and extreme off-center errors, have sold between $40,600 and $88,600. Numbers that seem unbelievable for a coin so small and so recent. So the next time you hold a 2014 dime in your hand, slow down for a moment. Tilt it in the light. Examine its edges, its color, its design. You might be holding something that survived a rare moment inside the mint, a mistake that escaped detection, traveled through countless hands, and now waits for someone with curiosity and attention to finally discover its hidden story and its hidden value.